Don't look down on this 14-year-old boy. He is a genius that only happens once in 1,000 years. It took Luke less than half an hour to complete the extremely difficult math test, but his parents were not happy with his talent, because Luke was not only smart but also had the ability to control objects remotely. His parents were worried that when Luke left home for college, his secret would be discovered by outsiders. That could bring him unpredictable dangers. Luke had his own opinions. Since he was young, and high school did not satisfy his knowledge, Luke was eager to study at a top school to broaden his knowledge. No one expected that his brilliance would be targeted by someone with a plot. That night, an elite special forces team broke in while Luke was sleeping. He was drugged and unconscious, then woke up in a familiar bedroom. Everything looked normal, but Luke felt something was very wrong. The torn uniform shirt yesterday was now intact as new. He walked to the window and was horrified to find it sealed shut. Luke rushed out of the room, but was met with an unfamiliar hallway. He realized that his bedroom was a replica. A girl his age appeared and introduced herself as Carissa. She called Luke by name and knew his personal interests. It turned out that this was a secret research institute searching for genius teenagers. Every new student was informed of their identity, but Luke's special ability was still kept completely secret. Carissa revealed that she could sense other people's thoughts, but very weakly. Despite the strange things, Luke was still much calmer than his peers. He wanted to know what the true purpose of this research institute was. The familiar bedroom and explanation were just to make students accept this place early. In fact, everything hid a larger conspiracy behind it. The Dean Sigsbee and the technical advisor were watching Luke through the surveillance screen. She sighed and commented that he was exactly as described, extraordinary observation and analysis skills. At that moment, Luke silently looked straight into the camera and knew that he was being watched. Sigsbee signaled the security chief to invite him to meet in person. When Luke reached the elevator door, a short-haired woman walked out. He realized that it was the person who had kidnapped him the night before. Before Luke could ask anything, the security guard pushed him into the elevator. The person in charge of the research institute was Sigsbee. She exuded a terrifying aura of authority. She praised Luke's unusual calmness, unlike the other children who came here. The first question Luke asked was why they had brought him here. Sigsbee insisted that this was not a kidnapping, but important research. She said that Luke would have the honor of participating in saving the world. Luke showed no expression and only asked to call his parents. Sigsbee sternly declared that the existence of the research institute was top secret. It was absolutely forbidden for anyone to contact the outside world. Luke quickly accepted the reality and just wanted to know what he had to do. Sigsbee did not answer, but only reminded of the iron rule of absolute obedience to the staff, including having to inject drugs multiple times to serve the experiment. She assured that when it was over, Luke's memory would be erased and he would return safely. Despite the arbitrary rule, Luke did not protest or show any agitation. He said that this room did not make him feel comfortable at all. At the same time, the female agent who participated in the kidnapping of Luke was given 48 hours of leave. In the elevator, she met the security chief and was reminded to look at the new target's file. He warned that the next child would not be easy to deal with. The female agent agreed verbally, but her eyes flashed with hesitation. Leaving the research institute, she had to go through many strictly armed checkpoints. They announced to the outside that this was a high-level infectious disease research center, and that no one without permission was allowed to enter this area. When she returned to town, the female agent found her girlfriend, a journalist, in a tormented mood. She was hesitant to expose the atrocities of the institute because each child was taken without permission from any agency, and what they experienced in the institute was worse than hell. Finally, the female agent decided to reveal the truth and hoped that her girlfriend would use the press to amplify it. But unexpectedly, the journalist pulled out a gun and shot her straight. It turned out she was a spy, placed by the security chief, and anyone who tried to reveal the existence of the institute would be silenced forever. At that time, Luke was still unaware of the cruelty behind the research institute. An employee explained that the coins rewarded for cooperation could be exchanged for food. Soon, Luke was taken to a room full of sophisticated equipment. A technician coldly announced that he needed to implant a microchip into his body. Luke immediately refused because he was not a prisoner, but his statement only received a cold punch. Luke understood the true meaning of the iron rule that Sigsbee had mentioned. He reluctantly sat down in a chair so that the staff could implant a glowing device in his ear. Without asking, he knew that it was for location and surveillance. In the evening, Carissa knocked on Luke's door to invite him to meet the other friends. On the way to the cafeteria, she explained about the mind-reading superpower. Carissa's ability could only receive the most intense thoughts in the present. Even so, Luke still found the ability extraordinary and surprising. In the cafeteria, two friends had already arrived. Carissa introduced the Asian boy, wearing glasses, named George, as a very arrogant person. As soon as everyone sat down, George immediately showed off his superpowers. He just used his mind to knock over the glass of water in front of him, and the water droplets that were scattered even condensed in the air. The staff shouts made the water quickly melt. George said that this was the limit of his ability. Compared to the mutants in the movies, he was far behind. While the group was talking, a boy named Nicky walked in. Nicky's little finger was bandaged. He said he fell, but anyone with a keen eye knew that this was the price for disobeying the experiment. Carissa explained that Nicky was a famous problem student at the institute, and everyone was used to his rebellious behavior. However, Luke realized that Nicky seemed to be more than simple. The people here were all outstanding individuals of their age. George implicitly reminded Luke that being close to Nicky would cause big trouble. Late at night, Luke couldn't sleep, so he went out to the yard for a walk and met Nicky. The two used a game of chess to probe each other's intentions. Luke only needed 6 moves to checkmate, which surprised Nicky. Nicky implied that there were no fairy tales or saviors in this world, and that escape could only be accomplished by oneself. Luke silently nodded, as if accepting Nicky's invitation. Before they could discuss their escape plan, they had to attend the farewell ceremony. It turned out that Luke's area was only the front area of the research institute, which was used for reception, testing, and preliminary training. Once qualified, students would be transferred to the mysterious back area. Today was Iris's graduation day from the front area, but she wasn't happy at all. Instead, Iris's face was filled with fear and anxiety. When the party ended, she was taken out of the cafeteria by the staff. The rest of the people just stood at the door saying goodbye. Watching Iris's figure disappear, Nicky softly said the cruel truth that we will never see her again. Before Luke could ask, he was taken to the underground laboratory. From today, he would begin his own training program. Technician Henry had been waiting for him for a long time. Luke half reluctantly, half forced himself to sit on the cold metal chair. He asked Henry if he was the legendary heartless doctor. He did not answer, but ordered Luke's limbs to be fixed to the chair. A green tube of medicine was injected into his arm. Luke felt his head spinning, and the scene before his eyes began to distort. Henry stared at the EEG screen and asked him to concentrate. Luke had to move the metal box in front of him. The box did not budge, so the assistant injected another dose. Luke's mental strength instantly increased many times. He focused his eyes on the metal box and slowly lifted it into the air. After only 10 seconds, the box fell back to the table. Luke was exhausted, and the staff comforted him that everyone was like that on their first try. But Nicky quietly said that this was just the beginning. George was about to take the final test of the precinct. It was on a device called Dreamland, which was said to be able to dig into the deepest fears in the subconscious. The two of them were suddenly discussing how to avoid the upcoming test when an employee immediately ran over and rudely interrupted them, as if he had heard everything. Luke and Nicky used the excuse of playing basketball to go outside. This was one of the few blind spots not monitored by the institute's cameras, and that they pretended to practice but were actually whispering about their escape plan. Luke thought that the biggest obstacle was the dense surveillance system everywhere. He thought about it and then proposed a bold plan, which was to convince an employee to act as an insider. As a genius teenager, Luke understood the weaknesses of both humans and artificial intelligence, but this plan was high risk and time was not on their side. At the institute's outpost, each child only stayed for an average of 15 days. Luke thought that they needed a strong psychic who could read the minds of the employees. Only then would they be able to convince the employees to betray the institute from within. Unfortunately, Carissa's current abilities were too weak to take on the task. When Luke returned to the cafeteria, he saw George using his mind to control the vending machine. He took the free snacks and boasted that his ability had become stronger after the Dreamland test. George didn't know if this was good or bad. As soon as he finished speaking, the snack box appeared on the table. During their conversation, they accidentally mentioned that the institute was about to have a new member. At first, everyone didn't pay attention, but that night, Luke was awakened by sobbing. He found a small figure huddled in the hallway. It was Avery, a new member who had just arrived today. Carissa instinctively used mind reading and was immediately terrified. This boy's mental power was so strong that it was terrifying. If Carissa was just an amateur, then Avery was a genius in the psychic world. Luke and Nicky looked at each other, knowing that the person they needed had appeared. What made Luke even happier was that Avery's EQ was also very high. The next day, Avery publicly expressed his attitude in front of everyone. They were curious about his superpowers and were quickly amazed by Avery's abilities. He not only read minds but also recalled memories from many years ago. But Avery did not know that that every word and action was recorded by cameras. Even the cleaning staff in the cafeteria was the dean's subordinate. That morning, Luke was taken to the underground laboratory. Technical advisor Henry gently said that this was just a test, but as soon as Luke sat down on the chair, his limbs were tied tightly with leather straps. An injection of green liquid was injected. The feeling of dizziness came again. The staff watched indifferently for a few seconds, and then pushed the screen in front of Luke. The advisor warned him to look at the screen the whole time, or he would get an electric shock. Luke struggled so hard that his nose bled, but the guard still held his head tightly. In his daze, Luke saw colorful balls appear on the screen. The professor was surprised, carefully recorded the data, and then turned off the unpleasant image. Luke suddenly had a convulsion all over his body and quickly lost consciousness. When he woke up, he was still tied to the chair. The professor said that the test was not over yet and took out a few cards with animal pictures. He asked Luke to use his supernatural ability to identify the content of each card. Tears streamed down his face, and he said that he was uncomfortable and could not continue. Seeing this, the professor had to pause and order Luke to be taken back to his room. As soon as the door closed, his tense expression immediately relaxed. It turned out that all the reactions just now were just an act to prolong his stay here. Luke could not forget the scene of his senior Iris being forced to graduate. He told himself that he had to escape before graduation day approached. Meanwhile, the Dean Sigsbee began to suspect the head of security house. She secretly watched the cameras, but could not hear anything because the system was muted. This concealment made Sigsbee believe that House was planning something secret. She immediately called the boss of the institute to report the security threat, but the boss scolded Sigsbee for talking too much and hung up immediately. This had inadvertently created an opportunity for Luke and Avery's escape team. Both of them began to closely observe the behavior of the staff to find loopholes. Avery could sense everyone's thoughts with just a glance. Some hated the children, some treated them like air. When passing by the vending machine, Luke unconsciously chose Avery's favorite. He realized that Avery could not only read memories but also influence other people's thoughts. The two talked and discovered that the cleaning woman was the dean's subordinate, but he also hated this place and kept many secrets. Luke suspected that this could be a breakthrough to escape. The group went to the outdoor yard, the only place without surveillance cameras. Besides the high barbed wire fence, there were guards patrolling every 6 hours. Avery unexpectedly demonstrated his ability to borrow the sight of a police dog. The image showed that the back area was not at all like the place where people lived, as the institute said. Carissa panicked and announced that she had just passed the final test. The next day, the dean hurriedly held a graduation ceremony for her. The atmosphere was stifling, and none of the children seemed happy. They knew that being taken away meant disappearing forever. Luke spotted the cleaning woman in the corner, wearing an unhappy expression. He made up his mind to get closer and seek her help. However, the cleaning woman sadly said that she was completely helpless. Luke returned to his seat and reminded everyone to find out where they were going after graduation. The dean, standing nearby, silently signaled to the staff behind him. The staff immediately grabbed Carissa and roughly dragged her away. Nikki rushed to stop them, but was shocked by the electric baton and fell down. Carissa was dragged out of the cafeteria while her friends watched helplessly. Avery silently activated his ability to connect his consciousness with hers. Through Carissa's eyes, Avery saw her being escorted down a dark tunnel. On both sides were mottled cement walls and dim lights flashing overhead. At that moment, the connection between them was suddenly cut off. Perhaps Carissa had gone beyond Avery's range of ability. They didn't know that they were all being secretly watched by the dean. A stranger had just arrived in town. His name was Tim. He was originally a police officer from another city and was now transferred here. The reason was that Tim drank alcohol and injured a young man. In town, Tim was assigned to the night patrol shift. On his first day of work, he met an eccentric old woman wandering around. She often muttered that strange things happened every day in this town. The people considered the old woman harmless, so no one paid attention to what she said. Only Tim stopped to listen to her scattered stories. The colleagues said that she used to be a wealthy lady in town, but a mysterious accident took away her daughter and 3 others. There was no evidence, so the police concluded that it was an accident. The old woman insisted that it was a murder. After many unsuccessful appeals, she gradually became insane. Tim did not hate the old woman because his mother also had Alzheimer's. He understood that seemingly meaningless words were sometimes based on the truth. In the following days, whenever Tim had free time, he would go and talk to the old woman. It was the first time Tim heard about the research institute from her. The old woman told him that she had a close friend who played the accordion, went to the hospital, and then disappeared. Tim did not pay attention to that strange story at that time. until one day she woke up in a panic from a strange dream. The old woman said her premonition had never been so strong. Someone used mind reading to control the pilot to cause a plane crash. She sternly told Tim never to go to the research institute at the end of Highway 10. That night, after his patrol, Tim stopped by the only bar in town, where he met a mysterious female journalist. In fact, she was a spy from the research institute, infiltrated into town. The spy's mission was to eliminate anyone who wanted to reveal the institute's secrets. Tim didn't know, so he asked her about the research institute on Highway 10. The female spy calmly replied that she had heard that they researched aliens there. She said she would write a special article on the subject. The TV news in the bar suddenly reported breaking news about the plane crash. Tim's blood froze because it matched what the old woman had said. He quickly told the female journalist everything and mentioned her speculation. She believed that the research institute specialized in controlling human minds. The female spy just laughed and teased that the old woman was a famous crazy woman. She then made an excuse and quickly left the bar. The next night, when Tim patrolled the abandoned shack, he found the old woman dead. White foam was coming from her mouth, a sign that this was a murder to silence her. So where was Carissa taken, and what secrets was the research institute hiding? Although there were no answers, clues gradually emerged from the dialogue between the characters. The security chief had deep connections with the forces behind the research institute. On the surface, they were trying to develop supernatural powers for the children, but in reality, it was for other interests. The Dean Sigsbee was probably just a puppet pushed onto the stage to hide her intentions. Even she didn't know where the graduates were taken and what they were used for. Superpowers are not only for research, but can also be used for unlimited purposes. The plane crash caused by mind control is the most typical and terrifying example. The security chief once lured the technical advisor away from training children with supernatural abilities. It was this conversation that made the dean begin to suspect him. When the group was discussing the new members of the research institute, a pair of twin sisters, while supervising another recruit, he came in hot-tempered and treated everyone as enemies. Nikki and George immediately knocked out the tall guy with just a few simple moves. He was then taken to the yard to vomit and was advised by Luke not to think of this as a school. The security chief came to take the tall guy to the dean and reassured him that there would be no danger. After they left, Avery asked Luke about his mind-reading ability, but he just kept quiet. Luke didn't want anyone to know that he had two powers, so he could prolong his time in the outpost. Nikki and Avery promised to keep it a secret, but they didn't know that Luke was about to fall into the hands of two powerful people. That night, the security chief and the technical advisor secretly took Luke to the new lab. Before him was the Dream River, a device to test his mental endurance. Luke's limbs were tied, and he was injected with a drug that made his eyelids heavy. Horrifying images flooded in. His deepest fears were brought to the surface, leaving Luke exhausted after the test. Just then, Avery burst in and reported that he had sensed Carissa somewhere far away. Before, all connections had failed, but now his sensing power had increased dramatically. Then Avery held Luke's hand while activating his superpower, and the two connected to Carissa's mental world. It turned out that Carissa was not dead, but was in a dark room, and she was touched when she knew that Luke was looking for her. Carissa told her that the back area was not as scary as rumored. She did not have to do repeated tests and had free snacks. But every night, Carissa had to watch a role-playing movie. However, Avery realized that everyone there was dull. Carissa had just arrived, so she was better, but had dark circles under her eyes, and even the once energetic Iris was now like an old woman. She even threw cigarette butts into her porridge. Carissa said that since she had come here, her mind had been spinning all day, and Avery confirmed that there was always a small noise coming from behind the iron door, but Carissa had never been in there. The group was about to open this door when the connection was cut off. The dean reviewed the camera and found the technical advisor arbitrarily experimenting on Luke, her face distorted with anger. The students wondered why Luke had to test the River of Dreams a week early, and George was jealous, believing that being in the back room would bring him closer to going home. The tall newcomer quickly became close to the twins, and Avery realized that he treated them like family dogs. The Dean Sigsbee came and wanted to talk to Luke alone, and when everyone left, she asked what the technical advisor had done to him last night. Luke wondered if Sigsbee did not know he was in the River of Dreams, and he realized that the dean and her subordinates did not get along. Sigsbee admired Luke's deductive skills, but when he did not say anything, she stormed off. The next afternoon, the tall guy who had been the first to test was tortured into vomiting. The cleaning woman was called to clean. Luke took the opportunity to talk to her. She said that this was the only place without cameras. Luke read the cleansing woman's thoughts. Her son had passed away, so she loved the children but was afraid afraid of the institute and did not dare to help. Luke returned to his room, disappointed. He dreamed of the tall guy killing the twins with dumbbells. Luke immediately rushed to their room when the security arrived. They found the tall guy beating the two girls. The attack made everyone uneasy. The Dean Sigsbee had to explain that the tall man lost control because he could not stand the test, and that it was an accident. The injured twins were fine. The tall guy also sincerely apologized. All three were arranged to go somewhere else to rest and recover. Avery used his mind-reading ability to realize that the dean was lying. George wanted to visit the twins, but was refused. Even though the incident seemed to be over, Luke still felt uneasy. He realized that his mind-reading ability had evolved into precognition. If the institute discovered this secret, Luke would be in big trouble. Ironically, a guard took him to the new laboratory. The technical advisor calmly said that in addition to the regular tests, they also kept some special items reserved for special students. The glass chamber in front of him was one of them, so Luke needed to confess honestly. Besides the ability to control objects, did he have mind-reading ability? Luke denied. The guard immediately opened the glass chamber door. The advisor explained that the threat of death would trigger primitive fear. At that time, many people would instinctively reveal the hidden truth. Seeing Luke silent, the guard pressed the button to drain all the oxygen in the glass chamber. A feeling of suffocation came over him. His face turned red from lack of oxygen. However, Luke still gritted his teeth and kept it a secret. He did not admit his true ability. At the same time in town, Tim went to see his superior to report. He suspected that the death of the crazy old woman was very strange. She had accurately predicted the plane crash and died the next day. But everyone knew that the old woman often talked nonsense, so the police chief thought it was just a coincidence. Tim boldly guessed that she had the superpower of predicting the future. If so, this death was definitely not an accident. The police chief shook his head and said that Tim was paranoid. He did not want to investigate further. The police station's budget was too limited, so the police chief would not waste it on an unclaimed case. Tim silently left, but his beautiful colleague immediately chased after. Admiring his perseverance, the girl secretly revealed an important piece of information. The old woman's tent would be dealt with the next morning, so Tim smiled knowingly. That night, he went to the scene and searched the inside and outside thoroughly. The most valuable clues were old newspapers and a few empty bottles of wine. The next day, Tim brought them to his colleague's house to examine them together. She said that the wine was very expensive and that a wandering old woman could not afford it. A can of wine without lipstick showed that she was forced to drink the wine to kill someone. Tim showed her old newspapers about the accident of 4 children years ago, including the old woman's daughter, who was directly involved in the case. The colleague took a yearbook from the cabinet, which she had attended that year. Tim asked permission to put the yearbook in his backpack and drove to school early in the morning. He hoped to find new clues related to the research institute. The more Tim investigated, the closer he got to the secrets of this lawless agency. At the research institute, Luke's interrogation continued fiercely in the glass chamber. When he was about to faint from suffocation, the technical advisor was forced to stop. He was worried that a murder would cause trouble, so he told the guard to take Luke back to his room. Avery had already seen the darkness behind the iron door in the back of the room in his mind. Who would have thought that the treatment given to these geniuses was worse than that of animals in a slaughterhouse? Every day, they were forced to expend a large amount of mental power until their bodies could not bear it anymore, and were finally sent to a dark place without any sunlight. Here, after contributing their remaining value, what awaited them was the scorching heat of the incinerator. Avery, through connecting with the cleaning woman's memory, finally understood the whole truth. Luke only felt a chill down his spine. He did not want to become the black smoke rising from the chimney. At the same time, the two were curious about what the institute was using people with supernatural powers for. The Dean Sigsbee noticed the abnormality in Luke and guessed that he had both supernatural powers. Luke was not stupid enough to admit it himself and quickly changed the subject, asking if he could go home earlier if he had 2 supernatural powers. Sigsbee's patience was running out. She accidentally or intentionally looked at the computer screen. An ominous thought popped into her head. Avery activated his secret sensory ability. Immediately, Luke's face turned pale. He jerked the screen towards him. The news on the screen was shocking. His parents, devastated by their son's disappearance, chose to leave this world. Luke rushed forward angrily and screamed that the institute had killed his parents. Several guards held Luke back. Sigsbee had also discovered the ability the boy had been hiding and intended to teach him a lesson. Suddenly, the security chief rushed in and reported that they might be in trouble. Police officer Tim from the town had arrived at the checkpoint. He used the excuse of going on a trip to ask the guard. The guard still used the old excuse of researching infectious infectious diseases with a tough attitude, using the excuse of private property to chase the group away. Sigsbee glanced and knew that the group's purpose was not simple and suggested killing Tim. Captain House did not refuse but wanted to investigate their background first. If he was an FBI agent or a journalist, killing him would cause trouble. When Luke was extremely depressed, he lost all motivation to escape because his parents were gone. Where could he go now? His companions advised Luke to cheer up. At least there was hope elsewhere. Nikki, an orphan, was still actively preparing his escape plan. He discovered that the moving cameras in the hallway were temperature controlled. As long as the temperature rose to a certain level, they would be disabled. Just then, the loudspeaker rang out, inviting everyone to attend Nikki's graduation party. It turned out that he was about to go to the back. Everyone was silent. The actors came but couldn't hide the truth. This was a farewell to death. Avery gently advised Luke to cheer up. Don't let everyone's efforts be in vain. As soon as he finished speaking, Nikki started causing trouble in the lobby. While dodging the guards, Nikki used the electric baton to break the key electronic door lock. Everyone understood that his purpose was to create an opportunity for the group to escape. Luke's heart was moved. He immediately agreed with Avery to help everyone escape this hell on earth. Luke signaled to the cleaning woman. The two of them tacitly went to the vending machine to meet. Luke said frankly that he wanted to escape from the research institute and wanted to be helped with all might. The cleaning woman initially disagreed, but Luke mentioned her dead son. If he was locked up here, could the cleaning woman stand by and watch? She almost collapsed, wiping away her tears as she pushed the mop cart away. However, the scene of the two of them separating was seen by the Dean Sigsbee. She recognized the blind spot of the camera at the vending machine and immediately installed a new camera there. The next meeting between Luke and the cleaning woman was clearly recorded. Luke lowered his voice and said that the escape plan had been prepared. Avery had previously discovered a tear in the fence through the patrol dog's vision, and the barbed wire in the backyard was the keyhole for escape. But the problem was how to get through the backyard. The cleaning woman hesitated for a moment and then asked Luke to meet her in the laundry room at 11:30 p.m. However, Luke still had problems with the GPS device attached to his ear. The cleaning woman gave him a pair of scissors and said that only Luke could solve it himself. Sigsbee couldn't hear clearly but realized that something was wrong with the cleaning woman, so she called the cleaning woman to the office and asked if she had any requests. Knowing that she couldn't hide it, the cleaning woman lied that Luke was sad because his parents had passed away and she was just trying to comfort him. The dean didn't believe her and decided to transfer the cleaning woman to another position. She insisted on staying until the end of the fireworks show tonight because not everyone could replace her. Meanwhile, Luke was preparing for his escape tonight. Avery and George deliberately made noise in the lobby to attract attention. Luke took the opportunity to open the broken electric door and quickly went into the electric room to break the air conditioning wire. The temperature in the house gradually increased, and the camera would soon be disabled. When the time came, Luke took out scissors and asked Avery to cut the tracking device, but the boy tried and tried but still didn't dare to do it. Luke sighed, looked in the mirror, and endured the pain and cut off his earlobe and the device. He hid the device under his pillow, and Avery helped him bandage his wound. Taking a deep breath, Luke quietly left the bedroom and started moving in the hallway. The camera was paralyzed by the high temperature and Avery's superpower of sensing, so he moved as if no one was there, but he almost bumped into the dean in the basement. Luckily, she was busy talking to the technical advisor, so she didn't notice. Luke escaped and walked into the laundry room. Outside, the fireworks had already begun. The people with superpowers in the back area were taken into the cinema room. In addition to Carissa, who had a dull look in her eyes, there was also Nikki, who had just graduated. The dean solemnly announced that the images in the film were all real events, and they had to use their supernatural powers to complete the final mission. Nikki thought this was a brainwashing method, but the device attached to his temple made his head heavy. The dean coldly said that Iris would take the lead tonight and then go home. Nikki knew this was a lie and immediately told Iris to be very careful, but when the special helmet was put on his head, his thoughts immediately connected with a doctor. After being thoroughly searched, the doctor went to a Russian politician. It turned out that he came to treat this trustworthy politician's rheumatism. Iris immediately activated her control ability, and the others also tried their best to support her. The security guards next to her lit fireworks, not sure if to cheer or increase their abilities. Perhaps this was the origin of their name for the fireworks night. Finally, the doctor could not control himself and immediately pulled out a poison tube and injected the politician to death. Iris completed the mission but collapsed to the ground due to excessive energy consumption. Those employees, who were used to this scene, immediately took her to the secret room behind the iron door. Outside, They said it was rehabilitation therapy and she would be able to go home to reunite. The cleaning woman took care of Iris and then hurried to the laundry room where Luke was waiting. He quickly got into the cart and was cleverly hidden by her with a white towel. As soon as she went out into the hallway, the cleaning woman ran into the nosy security guard but still calmly deceived him. When Luke got out of the cart, she said she had opened the iron gate to the backyard so Luke could escape. The cleaning woman gave him a USB containing evidence of the crime and asked him to give it to a familiar journalist. Luke hugged her goodbye, then suddenly noticed Iris's vacant gaze, but he could only leave her behind in helplessness. Luke could only silently pray that she would not be taken to the crematorium before the police arrived. At this time, police officer Tim returned to town after his investigation, and he became even more suspicious of the research institute. With the help of his colleague, Tim re-examined the mysterious death case from many years ago. The records recorded 4 victims drowned, but the location was near the fence of the research institute. 2 weeks later, the institute hastily rebuilt the fence, making the case even more suspicious. The truth gradually revealed that 4 curious young men climbed over the fence to peek at the secret. They were killed. Then the institute faked the drowning scene and quickly repaired the fence. Because the case had been too long, Tim had difficulty finding evidence, so he chose to take the initiative to approach. The plan succeeded when House came to investigate Tim's background. The more he probed, the more Tim believed that the institute was hiding a crime and felt guilty. Unable to get any information, House only warned him not to come to the research institute again. That night, Tim drove to see the new fence. He did not know that Luke was also on the run. Will they meet each other on this fateful night? Episode 5 revealed the true purpose of the research institute. They control people with supernatural powers to carry out sophisticated assassination or sabotage missions. This method leaves no traces, unlike conventional violence. The film ends here. Thank you for watching, goodbye, and see you again.